Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Joel Bryce, and welcome back to another episode of Delta Waterfowl's The Voice of the Duck Hunter podcast. At the release of this podcast in late November, we find ourselves smack dab in the middle of waterfowl hunting in North America. Hunting seasons in the far north are nearing their end, while southern states are just getting started. On today's podcast, we talk duck calls. Most hunters carry at least one call afield, with many carrying several. If you pick up a waterfowl hunting equipment catalog, you'll likely see pages upon pages of different types of calls. Even for an experienced waterfowl hunter, picking out a new call can be intimidating. On this episode, we break a call down into its component parts and cover subjects such as wood versus plastic, single or double reed, and even discuss the difference between expensive and entry-level calls. Okay, to help me talk about duck calls, I'm joined by two great guests. First off is Delta's own Brad Heidel. Brad is Senior Director of Marketing and Corporate Relations. How you doing, Brad?
I'm doing pretty well. It's a beautiful day here in Wisconsin.
All right. And second guest, Bill Ayer, founder and CEO of Slayer Duck Calls out of Eagle, Idaho. How you doing, Bill?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Do I have that right? Eagle, Idaho?
Yep, Eagle, Idaho. We're about 20 minutes from downtown Boise, Idaho.
Wow. That's some beautiful country. I went to, a rendezvous back there a few years ago, and that's pretty country. I think you're worth envying.
Yeah, I love it here. I moved here about 8 years ago from California, and it's. I wish I would have moved here a long time ago.
Wow, awesome. Hey, so duck hunting. Obviously, the only reason we're talking about duck calls is we like to duck hunt. So let's kind of get some of the fun stuff right out of the way here. Brad, you're in Wisconsin, right? What part of Wisconsin?
I live just outside of Madison, Wisconsin. I can see Madison from my house. That's as close as I need to get to it.
Yeah, that's far enough. That's definitely far enough. So what's your hunting season been like so far, Brad?
In all reality, the hunting season's been a little slow this year. I think that's something that we all anticipated going into this season. And it really is coming to fruition. It's been a challenge on a lot of different levels. Obviously, the drought in the pothole region has had an effect on the fall flight. But you throw in, it's going to be 65 degrees here on November 11th, 10th today, 9th. Pretty warm for this time of year. So there's really no reason for ducks to really hit that migration hard yet. Got some weather coming in this week. We're supposed to actually get our first snowflakes on Friday and maybe a good snowfall actually on Sunday. So I'm really hoping that makes a change.
That'll make some changes. Hey, Brad, we've never hunted together. I don't fancy myself as a good duck caller. I'm a meat caller. I can bring them into the decoys, but I would never win a competition. Brad, would you call yourself a good duck caller?
I would call myself a meat duck caller. I do what it takes to get the ducks to come in, and that's a question that I want to talk about a little bit later is with Bill as well is calling competitions. I've heard some different things just within the last couple of months, and I just want to get your opinion on some of the calling contests and what's involved there and where you see that going in the future.
Perfect. We'll do that. Brad, you're a man of my own heart, meat caller ×2. Switching gears to Bill. Bill, I'm going to give you that same opportunity to answer that question, but tell us, you're in Idaho. You've traveled around a little bit. Matter of fact, we met for the first time just a few weeks ago. You were out here hunting in North Dakota, but I want to hear, how's your duck season been so far?
Yeah, I pretty much echo what Brad said. The weather is balmy out there. It's, highs of 65, lows of 43. Normally it's about 19 degrees in the morning right now. I just talked to a kid up in North Dakota saying that, the migration hasn't happened there yet. And what we really rely on is those birds pushing from the Pacific Flyway out of Alberta. So I'm looking at the weather up there, and it's still pretty warm up there. And so our duck season has been a little slow. We're picking some off here and there. We usually have a really good mallard shoot here in Idaho. The folks in Idaho probably don't want me telling everybody that, but we have a really good mallard shoot here during the season, and but it's been a little slow, so we're just waiting for it to pick up.
You're hunting on the Snake, right?
Yeah, I hunt the Boise River, Snake River. Seldomly I'll hunt some private stuff, some cornfields, dry field stuff, but mostly on the Snake River and Boise River and some of the lakes.
So just curious,
You know,
what types of ducks or geese do you hunt mostly out there?
Yeah, it's all honkers and mallards. We'll get some widgeon. We'll get a few pintail. Early season, we'll get some teal, but it's mainly just fat mallards. Yep. And
Brad, you
honkers.
were going to ask him a question.
Well, that Boise, Nampa, Eagle area, that's some pretty fertile area over that way. And I know a lot of it's irrigated and privately owned. Do you have a difficult time getting on some of that stuff?
Yeah, it's pretty locked up. There's a lot of the kids that grew up here. They know most of the farmers and whatnot, and then so it's pretty locked up. I do have a couple connections where I get on some dry field hunts, pretty well. And then last weekend I went out with a buddy on a flooded cornfield, and we did really well. We had a limit in probably 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did you have to do any calling?
Yeah, those kind of hunts, quack here and a quack there is about all you need. You don't really need to be. But I'll tell you what, we're out on the Snake River on Sunday, and there's birds flying corn, and I mean, you really had to know what you were doing on that call to get them to pull birds off of that corn and over onto the lake, and we were doing it, but it wasn't easy.
So I'm going to throw you a softball, Bill. Do you consider yourself a good duck caller?
I'm pretty hard on myself. I'm not a competition caller, definitely a meat caller. But if I had to put a scale 1 to 10, I'm probably a 7.5 or 8. I'm not the greatest caller in the world, but I'm decent.
Hey, I like that. Modesty is one of my favorite qualities. So good for you. I bet you it's one of those things. Yeah, Brad, he'd probably put us to shame if we went on a duck hunt with him. We'd say, "Holy cow, I lost my calls, Bill. You're going to have to do all the calling today."
Yeah, no, I am not a competition caller. I could highball and do some of that stuff, but I'm not a main street caller. I have a kid that calls for me. He's, I would put him at that 9.5, 10 range, and he can get after it.
There you go. Hey, I want to. So again, it's at Delta. We've talked a great deal about drought, and what's North Dakota and the entire prairie pothole region is under a drought, still under a drought. And I think drought is a normal part of this wet dry cycle. It's dry is just as important as wet is. What's different about this particular drought is the entire prairie pothole region is under drought or very dry conditions. And, I've lived in North Dakota for 20 years. There's been years where North Dakota's been wet. Saskatchewan's been dry. Saskatchewan's been wet. North Dakota's been dry. But this is a prairie PPR wide drought. Bill, when you were out here in North Dakota, tell us what you experienced. I don't know if you've hunted out this way before, but
no,
what did you see from that drought?
That was the first time I've been up there. And so I saw a lot of water, right? I saw potholes with water. I saw sheet water. I saw lakes, right? I mean, everywhere we went, we put a lot of miles on. We went from, Bismarck, we went up to Devil's Lake. We put a ton of miles on, and I thought there was a lot of water. So it was hard for me to put it in perspective of what a drought looks like and what a wet year looks like.
Okay.
But the hunting was tough for us. It was not like, you go up there and you pick a field and just start crushing geese and ducks.
Yeah, it's different. And I guess the other thing too, Brad, you might remember the timing, but we have been so dry. You're in Wisconsin, Brad, but here in North Dakota, we've been so dry, but we were blessed with a couple shots of a couple inches of rain. So about 3-4 inches came in 2 separate rainfalls. You might have come out to North Dakota after that, because it shocked me how quickly some of these dry basins or ditches can fill up, and perhaps that's what you saw. But yeah, if the ducks aren't here because of the drought, or if the production wasn't as strong during the spring breeding months, yeah, you can have all the water you want. There aren't ducks to fill them up, and so it sounds like that may be the perfect storm that you came to North Dakota upon.
Yeah, I think I came the week right after you guys got the 4 inches of rain. So I
You
think
did.
that helped a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, good. Just made it sticky out there in the fields if you needed to get out there for your field hunts. So, hey, let's shift gears. Brad, you've been with Delta how long?
We're going on about 4 years now. So
Like 7 with wind chill. Is that right?
exactly.
Feels longer than that. Yeah. So
No,
yeah,
it
Brad
does
is,
feel longer. Than
yeah,
that.
Brad is Delta's Senior Director of Marketing and Corporate Relations. So, I guess just a shout out to anybody that would like to do some advertising or work with Delta. Brad's the man, and he does an awesome job. But Brad, you're an avid hunter, and
Yes.
I'd love just kind of this would be your opportunity for everybody at to get to meet Brad. Brad, where are you from originally? When were you introduced into waterfowl hunting?
I'm originally from Wisconsin. I grew up in Green Lake, Wisconsin, which actually was in the Horicon zone. So folks who know Canada goose hunting are usually, most of them are pretty aware of the Horicon Marsh here in Wisconsin. It's actually the largest cattail marsh in North America. So pretty neat place, pretty cool. Started hunting, right when I was able to, got my hunter safety certificate when I was 12 years old, went through the class with my mom and started hunting and got out with my dad a few times. Our grandpa Lang was a big influence in our hunting. But I remember, I'm not kidding, guys, when I started hunting and probably all the way through high school, I was in the Horicon zone, and you actually had to apply for a tag to shoot a Canada goose, and you could shoot one a year. Wow. And you had to put this tag around the goose's neck when you killed it, and then you were done. One goose a year. And now we can shoot 5 geese a day here in the same area. It's pretty impressive.
I do remember that. As a fellow cheesehead growing up in West Central Wisconsin, we would put in for our one tag, travel to that zone, fill that one tag. But now the difference is when we went home, we were in an exterior zone, and then there were daily bags. But yeah, I remember those days, how far we've come with Canada geese. They've gone from a thing of rarity to a pest, and depend on the eye of the beholder. So
yeah,
it's cool.
It's pretty
cool.
Crazy. It's pretty crazy. But like I said, it's great to be part of Delta Waterfowl. I've been in the conservation business pretty much my entire life. Started out working with an organization out in Minnesota called the Wildlife Heritage Foundation. After that, I worked with Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation for quite a while, Pheasants Forever quite a while, International Hunter Education, and now I'm here at Delta Waterfowl. So I've been in this world my whole life. Love it.
Well, we love you here, Brad. So thank you very much for that introduction. Bill, let's switch gears to you. So tell us, let's start with your background. Where are you from? And then tell us how you came into hunting.
Yeah, so I grew up in the Central Valley of California, right on the confluence of the San Joaquin and Sacramento River. So that was the Delta. So there was tons of duck hunting on the Delta. And then that was also, a lot of cornfields, a lot of rice fields in that area. So ducks would, feed out in the rice and corn and then come back to the Delta to loaf. And my dad pretty much lived on that Delta hunting and fishing. So he's the one that got me into it. I can remember him toting me around when you could barely walk, carrying his pheasant. And I just loved walking the cornfields with him and carrying those pheasants. I mean, those are memories I'll never forget. And that just, I think, fueled my fire to just want to be in the outdoors. He's a big, blacktail hunter, elk hunter. He's the one that got, bring me to Idaho every year elk hunting. And so my dad definitely got me into this sport. And then I grew up with a lot of friends and their families hunted. So it became not only a family thing, but also a friends and family tradition for us all to go out in September and hunt through January. So that's how I got into it. And, kind of right in the central or the Pacific flyway, I think 1.6 million birds would come down to winter in California in the Central Valley. And so there's a lot of opportunities to hunt the Delta, hunt flooded, corn or rice, or there's a lot of refuges there to hunt. So every chance I had, I was out hunting, whether it was pheasant, whether it was waterfowl, blacktail hunting, or dad took me up to Idaho to elk hunt. So it's been in my blood for a lot of years. I think I got my hunter safety when I was 8 and started hunting when I was 10. And so it's been an awesome ride. And so about 8 years ago, almost 9 years ago, we moved to Idaho. My wife and I, our daughters went to BSU, Boise State. and my oldest had a couple kids, and my wife's like, okay, it's time to move. And I was like, well, you don't have to twist my arm. Let's go. It's a beautiful country there. And I didn't really know about the duck hunting here in Idaho. And I soon found out, like, hey, the duck hunting is pretty darn good here. So I'm pretty happy about that also. So I keep that going.
So I have to say this. So I'm going to say this for all your friends, Bill. So nobody heard that duck hunting is good in Idaho. So don't listen to Bill. Don't go to Idaho, right?
Yep.
So that's what your friends would like you to be saying.
There you go.
But, hey, the truth is there's good duck hunting to be found almost anywhere. You just
Yep.
have to sniff it out there. That's for sure. So, hey, so obviously you have a business, Slayer Game Calls, but how does one decide to get into a game call business? What did you do before that?
I mean, that's a long story. I'll try to keep it in a nutshell here, but I grew up in California, ended up playing a lot of sports also, and got a football scholarship to Berkeley and played 5 years there. And then my dream was to play in the NFL. That ended after college. And so I was like, well, let's go make some money. So I went where a bunch of my buddies went. We went into the software business and spent 22 years on the peninsula selling software, but still had this inner need. And, I was always hunting and fishing every second I can get. And that was really where my passion laid. So 22 years later, after making some money and working for a gentleman here in Idaho, I pretty much laid down, retired from the software business. And he said, hey, look, let's take this Slayer thing to the next level. He goes, I love the brand. He goes, your calls are freaking awesome. Like, you should be selling these things. And I was doing it as a hobby. My grandfather was a custom furniture maker, a cabinet maker from, Sicily. And my dad was a steel worker, so he did a lot of stuff with steel. And my uncle was a cobbler. And so I grew up with a family of folks working with their hands, working with wood and things. And so that was also a kind of inner passion of mine. So I started tooling around with duck calls, probably 10 or 12 years ago, and came up with a pretty darn good duck call, just making them off a hand lathe. And so anyhow, long story short, Slayer got funded, and so I retired from the software business and went full-time Slayer because this is where my passion is. Everybody's like, you're crazy. There's a million duck call companies out there. How are you going to differentiate yourself and this and that? And like, I don't care. We're going to make the best duck call on the market. We're going to take this thing to the next level. And I also have a passion for elk hunting and whatnot. So let's make elk calls also. So that's kind of where we're at, as of today.
Yeah, I have to say, I enjoy listening to people's stories because I would say up until the duck call part, nobody would ever have guessed that you'd get into the duck calling or duck call manufacturing business, going from software into hardware of a duck call. That's pretty cool. That's definitely cool. So, Brad, you, how long have you known Bill?
Bill and I started working together just within this past year. Jennifer reached out to me and just asked for different ways to possibly work with Delta Waterfowl, and we've taken it from there. So we do some neat stuff. We're doing some, so obviously this podcast, we're doing some neat stuff through our magazine, etc. And we got these guys set up for our expo next July in Little Rock, and we just been talking, and I had a personal trip out to Idaho this summer. Went out to do a little bit of fishing on the Snake River with my wife and do a little bit of riding up in the mountains. And we all got together and had breakfast one morning and got to spend a little time, got to know each other a little better. And it's kind of gone from there.
Yeah, and I think the first time I met you, Brad, was in Texas down at the DU
Yes,
Expo.
that's right.
Yep.
Oh, that's awesome. Hey, Bill, I got to put you on the spot. What makes you like Delta? I'm just going to make that bold assumption you like Delta. What do you like about Delta Waterfowl?
Yeah, I grew up in California where, Delta, I didn't know Delta growing up as a kid. But as I got older, I mean, conservation is one of the things that I'm, growing up in California and seeing the development and just, the habitat being concreted over and houses being built and office buildings and all that. And it's like, where's the 1.6 million birds going to go? And then I started thinking about, well, where do they nest? What's their what's their, who's looking after breeding and things like that. So then that's when I got to know Delta Waterfowl. And so I think it's perfect that you guys are focused on the pothole region and the breeding and all those aspects, the biological part of it, which is, I think, is super important and is going to be critical for the future of waterfowling for generations to come. So, there's California Waterfowl, Ducks Unlimited, there's Delta Waterfowl, right? And if it's not for you guys, your organization, Delta Waterfowl, I mean, we're going to lose this tradition, and it's going to happen fast. It's starting to multiply faster and faster and faster. So we need organizations that are mainly focused on helping our wildlife. And that's what I love about you guys is, I say I care about it, but am I focused, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week on that cause? And I'm not, right? I'm building duck calls. I'm doing other things. I own a business. So we need people like Delta Waterfowl to be solely focused on that and passionate about it, and to carry on the tradition and keep an eye out for our wildlife.
Hey,
Bill,
well said.
You bring up some really good points there about wildlife and having ducks and everything like that. But guess what? Not only are we all about duck production, but we're all about the duck hunters as well. And I mean, we care about duck hunters, and we don't do anything if it doesn't directly benefit the duck hunter. And that's going to include our hunting heritage. If there's no duck hunters, we can have all the ducks in the world, but if there's no duck hunters, nobody needs a duck call.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
Bill, we really appreciate, your support of Delta and the kind words. Many hands make light work, and there's not one organization or business or entity that can fix the problem, let's say, or provide a secure future for waterfowl hunting. So all welcome, and thank you very much, Bill, for all of that. So let's kind of jump in. Hey, it's been about a 20-minute introduction, but I think this has been really good conversation. But let's break down a duck call from the sense of, so obviously we have, if you're listening to this, you're probably a duck hunter. And that means you probably have a duck call. But hopefully, if we're doing things right, we're bringing in some new folks that are considering buying a duck call for the first time. And so if we break it down, let's just focus on, a mallard call, which can be used for lots of other species. But so if we just look at that, a duck call is made of something. Bill, what are the types of materials that manufacturers are using today to make duck calls?
Yeah, today manufacturers are using a wide variety of plastics and wood to make duck calls. There's acrylic, there's polycarbonate. Folks are using Delrin now. We're using some Delrin in some of our calls. So, people are looking for hard plastics that are able to be machined, and then also will endure cold. And, we sometimes don't take great care of our duck calls when we're out there hunting, so it's got to be durable also. So woods and acrylics and any type of hard plastics people are using. Some folks are getting back into aluminum products, so we might see that come back in the future here. We'll wait and see if that's going to happen or not.
Wow. So what are the advantages? So if I'm a consumer, when I'm looking at the different material calls that I could purchase, what are some of the pros and cons that I should be considering? Maybe from a manufacturing standpoint, one material might be easier to reproduce than another, but as a consumer, what are some of the things that should consider?
Yeah, wood calls are nice. I think they're very traditional. They sound great, but their durability isn't. You have to take care of a wood call. They do expand and shrink when they get wet and heat and cold, right? But I think the sound of a wood call is awesome. It absorbs vibrations. There you go, Brad. What kind of call is that?
It's a Paul's calls. It's a handmade call.
Oh, that's awesome.
But you bring up a good point. But there's also the beauty of the wood calls as well.
Yeah, and it brings out the tradition of duck hunting. Brings out, you could really get a nice looking call with wood. So I personally, this weekend I was blowing my Bacote wood call all weekend. I like the way it sounds. I like the way it feels. And to me, hunting is a tradition. So for me, I like to use wood calls. But as a consumer, acrylics are a big thing right now. They're crisp, they're loud, they're very durable. They'll last you forever. So there's a lot of pros with the acrylic calls out there. Now, if you get in some of the cheaper plastics, there you go. There's a Slayer acrylic.
So for those of you that well, I guess for everyone, you cannot see what Brad's doing. I can. Brad is holding up this. Previously, he was holding up a wood call. Now he's holding up an acrylic call. Is that acrylic, Bill?
Yep.
Okay.
100% acrylic, both the soundboard and barrel. So yeah, and then you get in some of the cheaper plastics, and those, as you take in and out the soundboard, it'll start to wear on that hole there, and so it'll start loosening up and things like that. So as you get, like anything, the cheaper the call, the less durable they tend to be, and tends not to. It doesn't sound as vibrant as an acrylic or a good hardwood call.
Okay, so it makes sense. Wood, just like in a home or any other building materials, they're affected by moisture, either dropping it in the water or I guess maybe the humidity.
Or just
so what you're saying is that a wood call, not only over time can it crack or break down, but the sound probably changes as well. Would that be the case?
Yep, that'd be the case. As you're spitting in the call as you're calling with it, or it's raining out and the call absorbs water. The call will get a little duller and a little deeper versus when it's dry and the vibrations are acting differently on it. So it's to a duck, does it make a difference? I'm not sure, but to the person calling, you may be able to tell the difference.
Okay, so
I certainly think you can. Oh, sorry, Joel.
No, go ahead.
You can tell the difference between a wood call and an acrylic call. Sure. I would agree that an acrylic call is a little bit crisper in most cases, especially a dry acrylic call versus a wet wood call. You're certainly going to see a difference. And then I want to go back to before when I showed that last wood call I had up, what a pretty call it was. You make some pretty calls as well. And there's a lot of other folks out there who are making acrylic calls, and they're doing some really cool things with them. And they're actually aesthetically a nice looking call as well. Different kind of aesthetics. Granted, it's not your traditional wood, duck hunting heritage 101 call, but it's more of your cosmic 2021 acrylic funky call. And they're cool.
Yeah.
They are cool. And I'm actually flipping onto Bill's website. And yeah, you have some, I see a nice wood call with some pretty heavy wood grains. That's an attractive call. And I see some of the other ones that, I'll be honest with you, I haven't seen one of these before. It almost looks like air bubbles inside. How would you describe that? That's pretty
cosmic.
That's acrylic with mesh embedded inside of it. So those air bubbles is actually mesh. It's a fabric that's put into the acrylic. And so, yeah, I was going for something that's different. That's nothing like, there's nothing like it on the market. Something that, that mesh to me reminds me of the old camo netting. And so to me, it's an acrylic call, but it brings back some tradition of camouflage and camo netting that we used to use as kids to throw over our boats.
Well, I tell you one thing, for someone that's paid attention to waterfowling, there's such a tradition of, I would say, art or, and duck stamp art, obviously, but, whether it's, cool duck boats, wooden duck boats, or hand-carved decoys, there's always been this element of art. And so I do embrace kind of the difference, many different types of duck calls out there when it comes to aesthetics. And so, Bill, I have to ask it. I've always found it funny that, as duck hunters, we're out there with camo and some with face paint, and we put up fancy blinds and we hide and don't look up at the ducks, yet we'll put some bright pink or blaze orange call on our lanyard. Talk to that, Bill. Is that
yeah, I mean, we the only way analogy I can use is we're kind of like car guys, right? People that are in the old, 1950s, 60s Chevys or Mustangs, right? And we want the latest and the greatest, but we also want the tradition. We want the chrome, right? We want to look good. And so with our waders, with our guns, I shoot a Benelli, and I'm a Sicilian background, so I like anything Italian made. So there's all these weird dynamics that go into what we do and what our passion is. So the only thing is like we're these car buffs that I don't know. It's hard to explain why we do it, but you want everything to be top of the line. You want it to look good, right, while we're out there, but yet we're in the mud, trying to hide from the ducks and look like the environment. So I don't know how to explain that.
Well, hey, for me, I think there's an advantage. I'm a guy who loses stuff. I lose stuff all the time. I left for the first time. I found many knives next to gut piles out in the woods during deer season. I left my knife out in the woods this last weekend, but I was able to go back and get it. Why? Because it was orange. And so I was able to find it. So, hey, I'm the guy that probably should have a bright pink duck call because I'm going to drop it and I can find it. So, hey, in summary, we talked about more the body of the call, acrylic, different types of plastics, wood. I think in summary, wood is beautiful. It's traditional. It has maybe a different type of sound than the plastics. Less consistent, more affected by weather, banging it around. Plastics, more durable, more consistent in call. So now we're looking at more of the internal components, right? And so, Bill, what's the next most important part of the call after you leave, the part that you grip and put your hand on?
Yeah, I mean, the soundboard is definitely the most important piece of the duck call. And anybody that's, taken apart a duck call and played with the soundboard and say, oh, I'm going to sand it here, sand it there, or take the reeds out and you put them back wrong. It doesn't take much at all for that call to not work or sound really bad. So, without getting into too much detail, that soundboard, the soundboard itself has either a rise to it or it could be flatter. There's the tone channel, which could be deeper, wider, longer. Then there's the slope of the front of the J-frame soundboard. That dramatically affects how that air is traveling across or underneath those reeds and that vibration onto the soundboard. And then you have the exhaust where the air goes out. You have to have that perfectly done so that there's back pressure. So you could use back pressure like on a goose call with your hand. And that hole also acts as your hand in creating back pressure, which is slowing down the air and putting more flow onto those reeds and creating a certain vibration. So that is very touchy when you're playing around with those soundboards. So there's many important components to that soundboard, and you mess with one, it could throw the call completely off and make it not work.
Okay, so I call all that guts. That's the guts of the call, right?
Yes.
And so the soundboard that you've called it, that's probably the part of the call that's inside, I guess, the chamber of the call. Is that those? Sure, there are some that are wood, but are there differences in materials used that people should consider when you're talking about the insert or the guts?
Yeah, that barrel, the same materials people use for the barrel they use for the soundboard. That you could use wood, you could use acrylic. Ours are all acrylic, but you could use any of the other plastics for that. And like Brad was saying, there's definitely a difference in sound from wood to acrylic to cheaper plastics. You're going to get more, you're going to take away some of that plasticky high pitched sound if you're using all wood. And it really absorbs some of that I just call it a plasticky sound. It absorbs a lot of those vibrations. Whereas acrylic isn't going to absorb that, but it's going to push the sound further and sharper. So you get more range with the acrylics.
Okay. And then now the reeds, double, single, double.
You can go single or you can go double. I just talked to a kid today. We follow up on all of our customer calls, and he was like, yeah, I always blow this triple reed, that my grandfather had, so I guess there's triple reeds out there too, but today mostly single and double reeds. Single reeds, the double reed is probably an easier call to blow because you have that top reed helping prevent the upper reed from sticking in an upward position. So it's giving you some leeway as if you're using your wind wrong. A single reed, you have to have a lot more control over your air and your diaphragm, but you have a lot more versatility because you can really push the limits of that reed to an upper limit, and get a lot more out of the duck call with a single reed. But you could also make errors much quicker or faster if you don't have good control of your air. So I always say single reed's more of a advanced caller, from medium to advanced type of caller. Double reed is probably somebody who's learning how to duck call to the medium range.
Okay.
Do you have a single and a double reed call?
Yeah, I keep a single and a double on my lanyard, but to be honest with you, when I'm duck hunting, and I'm 90% of the time on a double reed.
Do you have a single and double reed with you right now?
I don't, not with me.
Okay. I was gonna
Putting you
say,
on the spot.
I'd love to hear the difference.
Yeah. The only thing is too, I've learned on these podcasts, if we blow a duck call on my computer, it does, it tunes out the sound when it gets too high.
Yeah, and then it blows everybody's ears out too. So yeah, that's okay. It's like my kids in the car. It's hunting season, so sometimes the car rides aren't that much fun right now. They're really loud. But so that is really awesome. So I do have this question. This is more directed just from me. I can't tell you how many internal components of duck calls that I've lost. I'll be duck hunting, be wading out to pick up a duck or throw out my waders, and I go to grab my call and all the internal components are gone. Sure, I could go back out there and try to purchase some of those inserts, but it always makes me ask the question, Bill, why should I go get a higher end or more expensive duck call when I lose the inserts all the time? So I guess it's a two-part question. Any tips for people on how to not lose the inside of your duck call? And then what's the advantage of a nicer duck call versus maybe a $20 Walmart call, which will get it done?
Yeah, funny you say that because I carry my first duck call I ever bought on my lanyard. It's a DR 115 made by Alt, and for the insert always, the soundboard always comes out of that thing, so I have it double attached to my lanyard. And I've lost. And
I'm going to interrupt real quick, Bill. Joel, after you lose your first duck call guts, then you're supposed to figure out that you put a lanyard around both pieces.
Yes. Yeah.
That should only happen once.
Yeah.
I wish that was the case because I have that same type of lanyard, but hey, it's I've had the reeds fall out. I've had, the spacer that holds the reeds in place fall out, and everything just goes dropping into the water.
Yeah. Yeah. So I lost that this last hunting trip. I lost my soundboard to that Alt, and I've lost that thing quite a few times, but gone back and found it. This time I couldn't. But first rule of thumb is double lanyard them so you don't lose your soundboard or barrel. If your reeds are falling out, then I would question the duck call that you have. That shouldn't happen. That if you're running cork or even a rubber wedge in there, your reed should not be falling out. Something's wrong there. But as far as a cheaper call versus an expensive call, I truly believe, and I've bought hundreds of duck calls and I've thrown a lot of them away. And as a kid, you don't have a whole lot of money, and so I went. My old call was I think $12 at Kmart when I bought it when I was 10 years old, and I killed a lot of ducks with it. But you're definitely going to get better sound. You're going to sound more realistic. You're going to have more versatility with a more expensive call. As you progress as a caller, from a simple quack to a comeback call to being able to hail call and do feeding calls and roll a lot of that in with each other. The more expensive calls that have more versatility are going to be easier to do that with, and if you just want to sound cool in the duck blind, you're probably going to want a little more expensive call, but you can
don't forget you want to look cool too.
Yeah. If you want to look cool, but I know guys who kill a lot of ducks with, low end calls, and all you need to do is quack and just get their attention. And if you're where they want to be, you're good to go. But, my point in case last Sunday was we were hunting somewhere the ducks did not want to be, and we were pulling birds over. And I wasn't the only one calling, so I'm not going to say I was the great caller, but us as a group, we were pulling birds over to places they didn't want to be to get them. So I think it's, when you're not hunting on the X, you're hunting a dry field where you've seen them feed for the last 2 days. I think a good call is super important.
Yeah, and Bill, this about Delta, and you mentioned it before. And what you like about us is we're keenly focused on the future of hunting. So part of that is hunting advocacy, creating, supporting public access opportunities, bringing new hunters. But one of the things that I try to do, and our hunter recruitment staff try to do, is we try to highlight that waterfowl hunting can be as simple or as complex as you want to be, and equipment can be as simple or as complex as you want to be. So we don't ever want to create this picture that someone needs $5,000 to get into waterfowl hunting, or that someone needs to go to the highest end duck call possible.
Yeah.
That it can be done. We kind of try to simplify, the big equipment catalogs. That being said, I do agree and support, some of the statements that you've made. If all you can afford is a $20 duck call, or join Delta and get a free duck call under a promotion, you're going to have success with that. But I think one of the things about hunting, Brad and I, we've mentioned this before and just in conversations, is as a hunter, you think about it. You can only hunt for a few months of the year, but you think about hunting all year round, and you think about conservation, you think about being that steward. And I think it's those idle times where I start tinkering with my gear. I tinker with my bow. I tinker with my shotgun. I tinker with my calls and clothing. And I think that's a lot of fun there. And so I did notice, Bill, that you carry a variety of calls, different prices, different materials, different colors. And I think that's important for people to be able to self-identify with what they're looking at before they make that transaction.
And to your point, Brad, or Joel, sorry, to your point on the, that's why we came out with that Mallard Reaper call for $49. It's a cheaper plastic for us, so we can, we could afford to sell it at $49 because, I'm big on hunter recruitment too, and I want to give a product to somebody that can actually, if you can't afford a $120 call, to go out and buy something, that's going to be quality, that's going to work well, and you're still going to be able to kill ducks with. But yeah, we're going to try to get into some of those level of calls so that, anybody looking to get into the sport can and still go kill ducks. Yeah,
that's awesome. So if you could, speaking to the beginner, what do you think is the best call for a beginner? Just kind of describe it. You'd mentioned double read might be easier, but what should break this all down into the Cliff Notes version of what?
I would definitely look for a double read call, something that quacks really well, something that has a very ducky quack. If you could just sound like a hen mallard, and you can get a good raspy, quack out of it, that's all you need. If you can do a 3-note quack, 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 then you're off to a good start, and you're off to a call that you're going to be able to go and get harvest ducks with. And then from there, if you could hit a longer, higher note quack, you're good to go. That's all you need. If it's a $10 call, it's a $20 call, you can get started with that, and you can go be successful. And, there's plenty of calls on the market that do that well, and I think as you grow as a duck hunter and a caller, if you want more, then you could look into different calls. But I would look at something that just quacks really well. The problem is, a lot of folks don't know how to get that quack. So any call they pick up, they don't know the difference. Because you're not using your diaphragm, you're not blowing the air correctly, so it sounds like you're blowing a kazoo versus a duck call. And so that was the challenge for me as a youngster, was they all sounded like a kazoo to me. So I just pick up any call and hopefully I can be successful with it. So I would watch some videos. There's a lot of good videos out there to learn how to duck call, learn how to use your diaphragm, learn how to make that quack. I would go buy a cheap call to start with and learn how to blow the duck call and then go test them if you can. Nowadays I don't know if you can test duck calls, but that was a mistake I made as a kid too, or somebody new getting into duck hunting was, I just picked the fanciest thing or something that caught my eye off the shelf versus, testing them, because every call blows differently and everybody blows, uses their diaphragm and uses their air differently. So you may be able to blow a Slayer call really well, whereas Brad might not, just because the way he uses his air. So I would definitely test duck calls out before I buy one so that I know my air works for that duck call. And, going to hunting shows or expos is a good way to do that, because there's usually 6 or 7 duck call vendors out there and you can go around and test them and get some tutorials from the folks working those booths.
Yeah, I tell you that one thing that drives me nuts, and hunted with a lot of different people all my life, and I can hear someone they can grab my duck call and they can make my duck call do things that I can't make my duck call do, and that just frustrates me, right? Like, it's my call, man. Like that thing should be able to sound like it for me too, but it doesn't work that way. Brad, so there's a lot of different types of waterfowl calls. Nice thing about a mallard call is you can blow that at a long list of species that are going to respond to that. I think that's kind of the value of a mallard. But Brad, are there any other types of waterfowl game calls that you carry, Brad?
I carry one of those Drake whistles with to try and imitate a Drake mallard, but you can also do all kinds of other calls on that. You can call pintails on that. You can call widgeon on that. Absolutely, I always carry one of those with.
Gotcha. Bill, any where do those types of calls fall into? Those seem to be maybe more niche specific specialty calls.
Yeah. I still on my lanyard, and this is another call I bought at Kmart when I was 10 years old, was a wing setter. I don't know if you guys know what a wing setter is, but it's a 3-in-1 whistle. And that thing is money to me. Even late season hunting mallards, I won't even blow a mallard call. I'll blow, not here in Idaho, but I will blow widgeon. We do have widgeon here, and also I'll just whistle at widgeon because the ducks are so call shy. So okay. I'll even use that on mallards, but when we do see teal or widgeon or the occasional pintail, I pick that 3-in-1 wing setter up and use that.
Okay, that's cool. And then you do carry, you provide a goose call, right? You have a goose call that you sell?
Yep. Actually tuning them right now. You guys can't see this, but we do sell a honker call, and in about 2 weeks we'll have a spec call coming out.
Oh, nice.
I've got a question for you guys. We're talking about different calls here. How many people have you heard say they can roll their tongue into a mallard call really fast and like, oh, well, that's a diver call. That's a diver call. I mean, I've heard people say that my entire life, and I can't say that I believe it.
Yeah.
What have you guys ever seen or heard anybody try that? Basically, I guess maybe all it's doing is getting ducks' attention, and there's something to be said for that. But I don't know.
Yeah, I don't consider myself much of a diver hunter, but yeah, the folks that I've hunted with that do consider that, yeah, they'll kind of growl, like at scaup or bluebills, and it seems to work. But hey, you know what? The one thing that I think is often overlooked is location, right? And Bill, like you said, there are flight days where birds are migrating. They're totally unfamiliar with the spot that you're hunting. They just showed up there that day. So the trick is have a good set, have good calling, try to bring them down for a rest or a bite to eat. And I think that's where, the true value of calling, that's where good calling really shines, is when you're getting a bird to do something that it already wasn't planning on doing.
Yeah. And, hunting the refuges in my younger days, you were there, there was somebody every 100 yards and everybody wanted to be next to the close zone. And, there was a foggy day and, the ceiling of the fog would raise up to about 80, 90 yards. So you can kind of see what's going on around you. And it's a flight day. You're hunting, for them going from the rice fields over to the close zone in the refuge. And so you would notice who the good callers were, because exactly what you were just saying there is they're pulling birds down, go short of the refuge into their spread. and you're sitting right next to him. You're like, how are they doing that? And then you're listening to how they're calling this, the sequences of calls that they're doing and when they're calling those birds. You're like, okay, calling it does make a difference, And then as you get better and you start picking up those things, those tricks, then you can start to see yourself pulling birds in that fashion, and other folks not being as successful. So I think you're exactly right. Those are the situations when calling and your decoy setup and everything else really matters.
Well, that's awesome.
I think this weekend I was set up next to the guy with the kazoo. I wasn't too far away from him.
So that might have helped you, Brad. Brad, hey, I think I see the end here, but Brad, is there anything that you wanted to bring up before we close that maybe we didn't cover?
For those folks that are listening, and some of you that are also duck call manufacturers, we've got the folks from Slayer coming down to the Duck Hunters Expo in Little Rock next July, and we're going to have a coal calling area down there where you're going to be able to come down and see different types of call manufacturers. You're going to be able to actually step out of the building right next to that area where you're going to be able to use those calls in an open air setting. So you'll really get a feel for what that call sounds like. Bill, you might be able to correct me on this, but your call sounds a lot different than it does inside the pickup inside your pickup truck. Whether you're outside, whether you're in an exhibit hall, whether in your open air, you're going to get a different sound out of that call. And this will give folks a really good opportunity to come down and see some of these calls. Maybe we'll have some people making some calls right on site, etc. It'll be a neat opportunity for you to come out and talk to people, see them, take a look at their calls firsthand, and then pick out the right one for you. Maybe it's their call.
Yeah. And I would second that. Even if you're a duck hunter and you're looking for a new duck call, I would go to the show, and that way you can test, kind of to my point before, is that, find out what call works for you. If it's not a Slayer, that's fine. But there's an opportunity to try multiple calls to see which one you like the best. So if you're a duck hunter, definitely make it out to the show.
Well, Bill, you're a nice guy. I enjoyed getting to meet you here in my office here a couple of weeks ago. You're a good guy, and I would imagine that everybody's going to feel that same way. But yeah, I think that's a great point, Brad. Like when you're shopping for optics, they always say, take them outside. That's the light isn't going to do it justice indoors. Probably the same thing for those calls, that you get a lot of echo and a lot of bounce off of things that don't exist when you're out in the marsh calling. So it'll be that great opportunity. If you're interested in learning more about Delta's first ever expo, jump on our website, right, Brad? And we're promoting it on social media, but it'll be this upcoming July in Little Rock, Arkansas. So please jump out and learn for that. I think wrapping it up here, guys, if anybody has questions about this podcast, anything they want to ask Bill, Brad, or myself, the podcast does have a dedicated email address. It's podcast@deltawaterfowl.org. Or Brad, people can find us on the staff page of our website. But Bill, I want to give you the opportunity to tell people how they can learn more about your calls, reach out to you, ask you some tips.
Yep. You can go to slayercalls.com and you could see what we have to offer. There's a 1-800 number there. You can call that. It'll go to myself or one of our folks working here, and we're more than happy to help you out any way we can.
Awesome. And then you said do you have an elk call line out there right now, or is that coming?
Yeah, we have elk calls coming out in January. We'll have a bugle tube. We'll have some bite calls. And a couple other things that I'm working on that could be game changing. So stay tuned. Those will be out in January.
Sounds great. Hey, I do want to say that, I do think I got to put my hunter recruitment hat on really super fast, and then I'll take it off, is that I feel that the more types of hunting that a person does, the more secure they are in staying a hunter forever. So it may sound odd, a duck call, a goose call, an elk call. But hey, I tell you what, there's not that many people that I know in the hunting world that only hunt one species or one type. I think we all have our favorite. If we had to pick one, glad we don't have to pick one, but if we had to pick one, we have that one thing. So yeah, jump on the website, give Bill a call. And as always, if anybody has questions, we'd love to hear them. Any comments, any future episodes that you'd like Delta to cover. Bill, Brad, thanks a lot for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been great,
Having us.
Joel. Thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
Okay. Until next time, everybody.
All right.
Have a good
thank you.
hunting season. I'm just pausing this, guys. We're still going.